Wataru is an ugly, annoying loser who doesn't have anything better to do than to simp over a baddie. One fine day, he realizes that it is enough and adopts the Sigma mindset, forcing himself to not simp on his crush anymore. This results in the girl feeling a bit left out and slowly realizing what she lost. However, before any of this, on way to school, Wataru keeps on pestering Eika, who doesn't want anything but for him to leave her alone. She calls him annoying and keeps on moving forward. Meanwhile, the football club members are playing football and the rogue ball hits Wataru on the head, giving him a sense of reality. Eika tells him to not approach her anymore and walks away. This time, Wataru agrees to do that, as he is now a realist. In class, Wataru arrives and greets Kei, only to ignore Eika. Kei mentions the football accident, commenting on how Eika is going to dislike him sooner or later, to which he agrees, surprising them both. Afterward, the teacher arrives, who also finds it hard to believe, seeing Wataru not simping on Eika. During a class break, Eika thinks that Wataru is once again stalking her, but he denies it and goes to the restroom instead. At the restroom, some boys grab Wataru and ask about the reason he is not being his normal self, thinking that he might have had a fight with Eika. Wataru tells the boys that he likes her to the point that he wants to support and promote her, leaving the restroom. During lunchtime, Wataru stands up to leave when Eika asks him about the place he is going to. Apparently, he is going to the cafeteria. And hearing about it comes as a surprise to Takeru, as Wataru always begs Eika to eat together. After he leaves, the boys think that getting constantly rejected might have put Wataru's mind straight. While eating his lunch, Wataru is approached by a girl named Rene. She sits next to him and introduces herself as the student in the class next to him. Without saying much, she leaves, and after going back to class, Takeru headlocks Wataru, saying that he has some girl waiting for him. Apparently, Rene came to pay him a visit, and it is a shock as cute girls often avoid a disgusting freak like him. Takeru is pissed at him for talking to other girls, but Wataru informs him that Eika is still a goddess in his eyes, while he is still not sure what Rene. At the same time, Eika arrives and leaves the classroom after putting her bag on her seat. Rene thinks that she might have given her the wrong idea about things. During PE class, Wataru is staring at Eika and loses sight of the ball, earning the other team a point. After the PE class, Wataru is washing his face when Kei pays him a visit, saying that she wants to say hi to a rare Rizzler of their class. She confronts him for talking to Rene these past few days and informs him about how she already has a boyfriend who is a second-year student. Afterward, he goes to take a look at Rene's boyfriend, who is talking to the boys about other girls, mentioning Shinomiya and Eika as well. Surprisingly, Rene's boyfriend also chooses Eika over other girls. In class, Kei mentions how there is something wrong with Wataru these past few days and asks if it has something to do with Eika, which he agrees to. Suddenly, Rene arrives and is looking forward to talking to Wataru. Kei intervenes and asks Rene the reason she broke up with her ex-boyfriend. Rene replies that she didn't have a good trait about herself. Kei then mentions that she will be okay as Wataru is now her new toy, which pisses Rene, and she leaves, asking Kei not to badmouth her ex-boyfriend. Wataru runs after Rene and accidentally bumps into a girl named Yuyu. Later, he apologizes to Rene for Kei being so forward, and Rene mentions that he doesn't mention Eika this much when he is talking to her. Wataru replies that he probably shouldn't talk about romantic experiences that he had with other girls. Wataru then mentions that maybe it is time for him to move on, as after getting rejected so many times, his heart has cooled down a bit. Rene then tells Wataru that he broke up with her boyfriend because he was somewhat interested in Eika as well, to which Wataru replies that he was once rejected in middle school as well. That girl mocked him for being mid and rejected him in the worst possible way. Additionally, her boyfriend arrived and started beating him. He went flying and his face rammed into Eika's talents, who were behind him. She screamed and slapped him in the face, which was when he fell for her. However, the real reason was that Eika straightened out the circumstances for them and got angry at the girl for mocking the person who liked her. He still can't forget the kindness she showed him that day. Apparently, if he can't go out with Eika, he wishes to support her in different ways. The next day, Kei noticed that Rene and her boyfriend got back together, and they felt sorry for Wataru. They later find out that Wataru was behind their reunion, and he feels happy about it. Back at home, Wataru thinks about how Eika is out of his league when the doorbell rings, and it is Eika at the gate. He invites her inside, and Eika asks Wataru if something is wrong with him, considering how he has been acting recently. She is kind of frustrated that Wataru is not being his usual self, and without wasting any more time, he once again confesses, only to get rejected once again. This time, he starts calling Eika by her last name. Suddenly, his older sister barges in, surprised as to how her loser of a brother manages to bring a girl home. This comes as a surprise to Eika, as Wataru's sister is the student council vice president. While walking her back home, Wataru mentions that he won't be following her around anymore and asks if she has any friends he can maybe hook up with. This makes Eika furious, and she runs away. The next day, Kei tells Wataru that not many girls could get close to Eika because Wataru was always around her, and because of him, she only has Kei or Wataru as someone she can talk to. This reminds Wataru of the times when he used to cling to Eika. This makes Wataru realize that he has been doing something terrible to Eika without even having an idea about it. He realizes that even though he hasn't seen Eika hanging out with anyone else, making him think that it really is the best time for him to stray away. Even during the break, Wataru keeps on thinking about it and runs into Shinomiya, who asks him if he is the one who scared her junior the other day. Wataru remembers him bumping into Yuyu and apologizes straight away, only to find out that Shinomiya was just joking with him. Just when he is about to leave, Shinomiya stops him and is surprised to find out that Wataru already knows her. To which he replies that everyone knows the charismatic chairperson of the school committee for morals and discipline. Nonetheless, Shinomiya mentions that Wataru has a low self-evaluation of himself and informs him that the reason Yu was scared is because she has a sense of insecurity towards men. Afterward, Shinomiya takes him to her office and is not convinced that he has no ulterior motives when he speaks to Yu. Apparently, Yu is also a member of the discipline committee, and Shinomiya mentions that from time to time, the members lose their confidence and become pessimistic. Turns out that even when Shinomiya tries to help them, they are not willing to explain everything, as the members think that Shinomiya must be able to do everything, not allowing her to understand what they truly feel like. After hearing everything, Wataru advises her to just give them a pat on their back, asking them to not let things get to them, as her committee members probably don't want her to adjust her level to theirs. Shinomiya finally understands what she needs to do and apologizes to Wataru for wasting his break time. The next day, Wataru is helping her sister carry stuff, who warns him not to drop it. His sister, Keed, then asks Wataru about Eika, and he mentions her as just an ordinary classmate. They both then notice Eika walking to school, and she forces Wataru to go and have a talk with her. Just when the two of them reach school, Kei comes running, informing Wataru that Shinomiya has been looking for him. She thinks that he must have gotten caught while staring at her plot. Afterward, Shinomiya normally greets him and asks him to pay the moral committee's office a visit during the break. Takeru then arrives, confronting Wataru for using his name as his, but Wataru calms him down after mentioning that she is his type. During the break, Wataru tries bribing Shinomiya with a cheap cafeteria bun and forces her to have one. He also gives Yu one, but she refuses to take it. She then questions the reason he lied about his name, to which Wataru replies that he thought getting mixed with someone from the moral committee would only mean trouble. Wataru then tries talking to Yuyu, but she gets scared after looking at his ugly face, forcing Wataru to apologize once again. In the end, she advises him not to use fake names anymore, and just when he is about to leave, Shinomiya stops him and informs him that there is something more she wants to talk about. Apparently, Yuyu is worried about the fact that she rejected his offer of help the other day and wants to apologize. Yuyu finally gathers up the courage, apologizes, and later shows gratitude for his offer of help. After returning back to class, Kei shows Wataru that more and more girls have been talking to Eika. Just then, he receives a message from his older sister, calling him to the student council room. Turns out that she needs help with school tours during summer break and wants him to gather the material. The other council members also arrive, asking Wataru to do more of their work. After the work is done, they all praise him for doing a good job. Keed promises to buy Wataru a big plot magazine if he helps her again, to which the cultured boy agrees. Later that day, Yuyu mentions that Wataru was looking at her with disappointment in his eyes, making her think it might be because of her flat board. The next day, the girls tell Eika that they want to visit her house as they want to meet her little sister. Luckily, she agrees and Wataru enters the class at the same time. Eika lets Wataru know that she wouldn't let her little sister come near a creep like him, and he hesitantly agrees. After class, Eika tries asking Wataru if he will be coming to her house, but gets interrupted when Shinomiya arrives and takes him away. Shinomiya mentions what Yuyu told her earlier, and Wataru replies that he was disappointed because Yuyu is still not giving it her all, as she called Shinomiya to stand next to her during the apology. This makes Shinomiya praise him for having the skill of reading people. It is finally summer, and after Wataru enters the classroom, Kei mentions how she went to Eika's house. Just when she is about to tell him more about it, the teacher arrives. During the break, Kei questions Wataru why he hasn't spoken to Eika yet, to which he replies that his staying away lets her speak to others more easily as he starts interacting. The environment might break apart. During PE class, Takaki arrives and tells Wataru that Eika's little sister, Eri, is really cute. He then asks Wataru the reason he didn't come, to which he replies that no one invited him in the first place. During lunch break, Takeru tells Wataru about how he has gotten to know Koga a little better after sitting next to her, and Wataru remembers Koga as the tomboy of their class. Seeing how he is eating all alone, Takeru asks Koga and the girls to let Wataru join them. Having no other choice, he ends up joining them. And surprisingly, they all are curious about his odd behavior lately. Takeru mentions that it is because of his sad excuse of a face and lets Wataru know that girls have been confessing to him lately, like the girl named Okamoto from class. Of the other girls let Takeru know that she is not serious and ask Wataru about his relationship with Renee, questioning if he popped the cherry yet. Wataru clears up the misunderstanding, letting them know that Rina is devoted to her senior boyfriend. Just then, Eika arrives and drags Wataru outside the class. He tries to think of the reason behind her anger, but nothing comes to his mind. Meanwhile, Eika, with tears in her eyes, gets closer to Wataru and lets him know that she is angry because he was talking to those other girls. Eika tries to explain herself more but fails and eventually runs away. Later, he is still wondering about the reason and discusses it with Kei, and she has no idea about the reason behind her anger. Suddenly, Hayato, the student council president, arrives and takes Wataru away to the council room. Apparently, he wants Wataru to give a self-evaluation about himself, and Wataru replies that he is just an ordinary guy, or a commoner to be more precise. He then questions Wataru about the reason he stopped going after the girl he liked. However, Wataru refuses to answer the question, and Hayato asks Wataru if Kid knows about it. Wataru tells Hayato that she wouldn't care about him in the first place, but Hayato reveals that she has been acting differently since he changed. He thinks that she might be the reason behind his change and thinks that she destroyed her little brother's springtime life. In the end, Wataru agrees to do something about it, and it turns out that Hayato has already arranged a place for them to talk to each other. While walking to the location, Wataru mentions that Kid will most likely not admit it herself, but he will not bow down and cater to her either. Eventually, Wataru reaches the rooftop where Kid is already waiting for him. She is surprised to see him. Wataru finally questions Kid if she has been depressed about something. He starts off by giving her 10 seconds to mention 10 good traits about him, but she fails. Up next is the ordinary trait, and she easily mentions his face, which doesn't come as a surprise to a goblin-faced fellow like him. Eventually, she manages to tell ordinary traits about him, and Wataru tells Kid that she sees him as an ordinary boy to begin with. He then lets her know that all she did was teach him the truth about reality, and there is nothing for her to worry about. Wataru further mentions that he has given up on many things, but that's something he got passionate about by choice and then cooled off on his own. He lets Wataru know that there was a person who gave up on the girl he liked, but in reality, he couldn't give up and had a breakdown afterward. She thought that her brother might go through the same and she would be the one responsible. In the end, Kid tells Wataru that he shouldn't give up on a girl he likes and promises to not make fun of him or say unreasonable things anymore. However, Wataru stops her midway and lets her know that he never had something like a kind or pretty older sister. He tells Kid that she is someone who acts like a queen while forcing him to act like her errand boy. But that is who she really is, and he doesn't want her to change at all, as the shitty older sister is the person he likes the most. Finally, Kid gets back to her usual self and the two of them start fighting. Suddenly, Eika barges in and confronts Wataru for talking to his older sister in such a manner. Apparently, Eika decided to follow him because he was being dragged away by Hayato. Eika finally realizes that she did something creepy like following him and leaves in embarrassment. Afterward, Kei tells Eika that she has rushed into things a little too much. Furthermore, she asks her the reason, to which Eika replies that she doesn't understand herself and mentions the day when everyone visited her home. It felt weird to her that Eri warmed up to everyone, making Kei realize that Eika wanted Eri to meet a certain someone before her other classmate. Apparently, his odd behavior is making Eika frustrated, but even Eika doesn't know why she feels like that. Kei thinks that losing a place she belongs to is making her feel uneasy. In the end, Kei advises Eika to make the effort Wataru was responsible for making earlier. During breakfast, Kid mentions that Wataru's hair has been getting weird day by day and suggests dyeing it already. While walking to school, Wataru thinks about how he used to better take care of himself in order to impress Eika, but now he doesn't care, as no one is left for him to impress. After entering class, he greets Eika and Kei and starts messing around with Kei, which Eika finds really creepy. During lunch, Wataru finally gets to sit on a seat that is normally taken and starts enjoying his lunch, only to realize that Shinomiya along with Yu are sitting on the table next to him. Having no other choice, Wataru is forced to sit with them, and surprisingly, Yu is friendlier with him than before, making him think she has a boyfriend. There is one more student on the table called Aya, who is Yu's childhood friend and a member of the disciplinary committee as well. Turns out she is not really a fan of Wataru and thinks of him as a wild boar. Later, Shinomiya mentions how Yu has changed and mentions that Wataru is the one who helped her in the first place. His conversation with Yu gave her confidence, but Wataru thinks that it was just a fluke. Shinomiya then mentions how Wataru is Kid's little brother, and they both talk about her delinquent era when she dyed her hair blonde. Later in class, Takaki reveals the fact that he has a crush on Eika as well, which doesn't come as a surprise to Wataru, as according to him, almost every boy has a crush on her. Later, Wataru contemplates if Takaki is the kind of guy to whom he is willing to give Eika and decides to keep tabs on him from the sidelines. Suddenly, a teacher arrives and asks Wataru to distribute it to his classmates. Coincidentally, the book on the top belongs to Eika and he asks Kei to take care of it, making an excuse of wanting to visit the restroom. Later, Wataru is about to leave school when Eika runs into him. Apparently, she forgot something and Wataru offers to go along and find it with her. Eika then asks Wataru about the place he goes to during lunch break. She also asks about the people he eats lunch with and Wataru informs her that he ate with Shinomiya and the others. Hearing about this makes Eika question their relationship but calms down after he tells her that it's nothing serious. On their way back, Eika notices his emo hair and advises him to change it. Wataru asks Eika the dye color she likes and Eika mentions that she is more of a fan of black dye. Sadly, he doesn't find any black dye and ends up purchasing the dark brown dye he finds at the supermarket. After going back home, Kei decides to help him dye his hair. The next day, Wataru gets his result and places 65th ranking. This makes him think how he used to put a lot more effort before due to a certain someone and had placed 32nd for the midterm. It is clear as day that Wataru didn't have the motivation he did previously. Kei is also shocked after seeing his result as she thought he would surely be in the top 50. On the other hand, Kei is happy with her 74th rank as her previous rank was at 220. Meanwhile, Eika manages to secure second place, which she is really proud of. Soon after, Takaki arrives and mentions how he got 29th place, mocking Wataru for not keeping up with his studies. Everything slowly starts making sense and Wataru realizes that for a beta male like him, studying is the only thing as he is already ugly and sucks at sports. This makes his motivation rise once again. All the girls surround Eika and discuss making some plans for the upcoming summer vacation. Takaki asks Eika if she will be inviting Wataru as the two of them haven't been talking much lately. Soon after, Wataru is about to enter his class when he notices a blonde girl stalking Eika from outside the class. He questions their motives, and suddenly hearing his ugly voice surprises the girl, making her scream. She starts arguing with Wataru, but he quiets her down by making fun of her scream. In the end, Marika, the blonde girl, get tired of him and decide to leave. The next morning, Wataru accidentally bumps into Eika and he ends up saving her from a truck that was about to splash water on her. However, he ended up getting soaked instead and had to change clothes. Eika gave him a handkerchief, asking him to use it, but he suddenly started feeling unwell. A headache starts getting even worse during class and Wataru takes permission to visit the infirmary, but falls on the ground before even leaving the class. The nurse informs Kei and Eika that Wataru has a fever and will be okay. The two of them then decide to stalk him while he sleeps, but the nurse advises them to return back to class soon after. Later, Wataru finally wakes up and the nurse informs him about everything that happened. Meanwhile, Shinomiya pays Wataru's class a visit and asks Kei about Wataru. After hearing everything, Shinomiya plans on telling Kei about it and paying him a visit as well. After the classes are over, Kei and Eika pay Wataru another visit and quietly peek behind the curtains, only to realize that he looks more down than usual. Suddenly, his headache starts getting worse and he shouts at Eika to not touch him, as Eri might end up catching his fever. On their way back, they ran into Shinomiya and Kei. With that being said, all four of them pay Wataru a visit and Eika doesn't seem happy after seeing how Wataru is letting both of them touch and interact with him normally. The next day, Wataru takes the day off and after school, Eika along with Kei pays him a visit. He invites the two of them inside and Kei mentions how Eika was the one who suggested paying him a visit. This makes Eika clear the misunderstanding that it was because of her that he got drenched and got sick. The next day, Eika catches Wataru arguing with Marika again and after noticing Eika, Marika comes over to have a talk with her. She starts bragging about securing the top position and grants her the privilege of supporting her. Marika elaborates that she will be running for the next student council president and wants Eika to support her. Marika's lackeys mention that the person from second year who was most likely to become the next president has been denying the offer and no other student has announced that they will be running as a candidate. Nonetheless, Marika wants to gain supporters from the start and wants Eika to act as a poster girl for her. However, Wataru thinks that it is a bad idea as she is far too popular for such a role. Marika gets furious but decides to let it go after realizing that people have started gathering around. Afterward, Kei arrives and asks him to look at Eika, who is embarrassed after what he just said. Eventually, Eika shouts at him for saying something so embarrassing, but the creep finds her anger cute as well, making Eika run for her life. After the math class is over, Kei teases Wataru and says that he didn't understand anything the teacher taught. Takeru offers to let Wataru borrow his notes, but he declines. Afterward, he visits the cafeteria and while trying to find a place to sit, he hears Yu calling him outside to have lunch together. All four of them sit at the table together and Wataru mentions that their relationship is still not good enough for them to eat lunch together. Then, Yu asks Wataru about his cold and is glad after hearing about his recovery. Shinomiya then informs Wataru that she would like him to join the discipline committee. This comes as a shock to Wataru, but he makes an excuse for not being good enough to join. To which Shinomiya replies that there have been no male students on the committee lately as only girls are the ones joining. For the time being, Shinomiya asks Wataru to think about it and make his decision later. Suddenly, Yu holds Wataru's hands and lets him know that she's counting on him. This pisses both of the other girls, and they end up beating him up. Later, Wataru runs into Eika and she lets him know that his hair is all messed up. She then goes on to fix it for him, and after she's done, Wataru jokes about paying her, which doesn't sit right with Eika, and she leaves. During the school announcement, Wataru notices that the speaker is the only male member of the discipline committee. After him, Shinomiya takes the stage and informs the students about the upcoming school tour. When she's done, it's Hayato's turn and he wishes everyone luck for the summer holidays. Later that day, the teacher asked for volunteers who would be willing to help with the school visit tour during summer break. Seeing how no one is willing to help, the teacher ends up picking students with no club activities and makes them play rock, paper, scissors to decide the one who will be helping out. Wataru is up against Tabata and ends up winning the match. Meanwhile, Eika ends up being the loser for the girls' side. This makes Takaki butt in and he asks Tabata to switch roles with him. In the end, he ends up becoming the helper on the boys' side. Looking at them makes Kei comment that they make a good pair, to which Wataru agrees. Kei is uncomfortable with how normal Wataru is acting and calls him a loser. After school, Kei and Eika hang out at a restaurant, ordering a parfait to celebrate the end of their first trimester. Kei comments that it will be a great opportunity to invite some other people as well and asks her to invite Wataru. On the other hand, Wataru is busy doing his part-time job at a bookstore which is run by a geezer with great fashion sense. After seeing Wataru's work, he compliments him and Wataru replies that he is used to this stuff after working at the convenience store. While cleaning the store, he notices some middle schoolers bullying a kid. He ends up saving the kid, who introduces himself as Sasaki. After calling Sasaki's house, Wataru cleans his bag for him and soon after, his older sister arrives to pick him up. Wataru also introduces himself and informs her about everything that happened. She shows her gratitude to Wataru for the help, and he instantly falls for the hot older sister. She then calls him a great young guy, about which he thinks the whole day. The next day, Keat wakes up and orders Wataru to make her some breakfast. During breakfast, he tells Keat about his new part-time job and asks her about the preparation for the school tour. Keat then mentions how he got the offer to join the discipline committee and asks him to join the student council instead, as she doesn't want to leave all the work to some stranger she doesn't know. Later that day, Wataru is working at the bookstore when the hot older sister pays him a visit. Wataru mentions that she is really mature, to which she replies that it is the first time someone complimented her like that because everyone always calls her childish. The two of them start talking about various things and she gets excited when Wataru mentions his school, as she likes the uniform. Nonetheless, Wataru keeps on playing the right cards, making Fuka embarrassed. She then thanks him for helping her brother out once again and informs Wataru about how he had a big influence on Sasaki as he has started playing outside again. In the end, Fuka gives Wataru a gift and asks if she can come again sometime, to which the desperate boy instantly agrees. The next day, Fuka pays Wataru another visit at the bookstore and lets him know that she is on her way to the library. Wataru notices her armband and compliments her for it. Fuka informs Wataru that she went to a shop near the sea and he instantly gets interested and plans to go soon. He likes the fact that the customers are able to make their own bracelets. As Eika's birthday is coming soon, he plans to make one for her. Apparently, she wants to go as well, which results in the two of them taking a trip to the shop. At the station, Fuka starts acting weird and is worried about someone she knows seeing her out with a beta male like him. Another thing she is worried about is her clothes, as she normally wears different kinds of clothes in front of the people she knows. Coincidentally, Kei and Eika are also on their way to the beach. The two of them then walk to Wataru's house and find out that he is at his part-time job. On the other hand, Wataru and Fuka also arrive at the beach. Fuka ends up catching Wataru trying to stare at baddies on the beach and teases him about it. Nonetheless, he ends up making an excuse and mentions that it is his first time on the beach in several years and asks Fuka about it as well. Surprisingly, she visits the ocean quite a bit and even came last year with family. Fuka then accidentally grabs Wataru's hand and apologizes afterward. Wataru still thinks that Fuka is a college student, and with that being said, they finally arrive at the shop. The shopkeeper remembers Fuka and comments on how mature she was the last time she visited as well. Later, the two of them take a look around the shop and notice all the raw materials that can be used to make various types of bracelet. It is time for them to start building, and Fuka decides to make a necklace this time. Meanwhile, Wataru starts thinking about the perfect gift for Eika. He informs the shopkeeper about it and she shows him a variety of materials. Fuka ends up choosing a pink shell and tells Wataru that his girlfriend will be delighted no matter what he chooses for her. This results in Wataru telling her about his sad rejection story, but also adds the fact that he still has a crush on her. On the other hand, Kei along with Eri and Eika arrived at the beach as well. After they are done playing, they notice the shop where Wataru and Fuka are and make up their mind to pay it a visit. At the same time, Wataru notices a photo of Fuka on the shop's wall and finds out that it is a picture from the time when she was a middle schooler. Afterward, the weakling is forced to use all of his strength in order to cut a small seashell in half. At the same time, Wataru is going through the shock of Fuka being a middle schooler as he always thought of her as a university student. Soon after, Fuka asks if he has already given up on the person he likes, and when he agrees, she questions why he is willing to go that far for a person he doesn't even like. Wataru replies that she will understand once she falls in love, which results in Fuka getting embarrassed and asking about the thing called love. After hearing Wataru's miserable excuse of what can be called love, Fuka starts having doubts, but he lets her know that love is not all just suffering, and it might be different for a pretty girl like her. Afterward, Kei and Eika arrive, but the shopkeeper informs them that the craft work has already ended for the day. Nonetheless, they decide to take a look at all the things the shop offers, and Eri notices a picture of Fuka and Wataru. Afterward, the girls enjoy devouring some food. On their way back, Fuka mentions how Wataru's piece wasn't finished, and they had to leave because of her curfew. Furthermore, Fuka asks to visit this place sometime else, and Wataru plans on getting her a present that time. While traveling on the bus, Fuka falls asleep and Wataru receives a picture of Eika from Kei, which ends up making his Excalibur go wild.
Yeah, boy.
The show owner informs Wataru that he will be hiring someone else after he quits when the summer break ends. Just then, a shrimp arrives and Wataru realizes that she is the girl from his class named Mina. Apparently, she saw the recruitment sign on the entrance and came to apply. Surprisingly, the shop owner also knows Mina as she is a regular at the shop. He hires Mina without any kind of interview and takes her to meet his wife. The shop owner's wife advises Mina to fix her bangs, and just when she is about to cut them, Wataru intervenes and starts acting as if he doesn't know Mina already. He starts off by asking what she does when her bangs get in the way, and Mina uses hair clips on her hair. This saves her from getting her bangs cut. The next day, the two of them greet each other and Wataru gets annoyed by how long Mina takes to reply. Later, the shop owner arrives and asks Wataru to teach Mina the basic stuff, advising him to not get any cringe thoughts in his mind. At first, Wataru advises her to fix the bands and then shows her the list of books that were sold yesterday. Afterward, he teaches her the art of dealing with customers and asks her to observe and learn while he deals with them. Finally, the first customer arrives, and while he is browsing, Wataru decides to teach Mina about some stuff at the register. Suddenly, the customer arrives and starts complaining to Mina about the book they don't have. Mina instantly goes into a state of nervousness. Luckily, Wataru manages to calm the mantis-looking guy and sends him away after taking the payment. Due to this incident, Mina ends up crying and Wataru starts having second thoughts about whether she is suitable for this kind of job. At last, Wataru talks to the shop owner and lets him know that Mina might not be the best fit for the job, but eventually decides to help her a little more after realizing how she is always alone even at school. He then sits down with Mina and tells her that customers like that are pretty rare, but it's better to talk to them in a frivolous manner. Additionally, the employees are not allowed to speak to the customer in the wrong way. And after all this explanation, he asks Mina if she will be able to handle the job. However, Mina replies that she doesn't want to quit and starts begging Wataru to not kick her out, to which he replies that he doesn't have the authority in the first place. With that being said, the shop owner arrives and allows them to go home. On the other hand, Shinomiya notices something wrong with Ikanos and he informs her that he hasn't been getting along with his little sister. After getting home, Wataru notices that Kei and Eika are on a video call and decides to join them as well. Kei notices that he looks tired and Wataru explains everything that happened, starting with how he made a girl bow in front of him. This makes both Kei and Eika more curious, and Wataru further informs them that the girl is shy and about everything that happened with the customer. Eika tells Wataru that it is okay for him to tell them more about it, and he asks her for advice regarding what he should do starting from tomorrow. She also tells Wataru that it is not completely his fault, as he still tried his best to light the fire of determination under the girl after finding out how she struggled. Suddenly, Kei leaves the video call, leaving the two of them with each other. The two of them talk to each other for a short amount of time until Wataru leaves the call, making Eika annoyed. The next day, Wataru apologizes to Mina about his behavior and starts off with organizing the bookstore along with her. After she is done with her work, Wataru is about to accidentally pat her head but manages to stop before disaster strikes. Just then a customer arrives, and Mina decides to deal with him this time. After the customer leaves, Wataru praises her for doing so well, and Mina replies that he did some practice by watching videos. Seeing how hard she is working to stay at the job, Wataru can't help but become curious about the reason why Mina doesn't want to quit. During break time, Wataru finally asks Mina the reason she wants to do this job, and her reason is to become independent and detach herself from her older brother. Turns out, her brother is Ikanos from the discipline committee. Mina continues and tells Wataru that she used to relax and clap with her brother, but one day he brought a girl over. Noticing the extra pair of shoes, Mina instantly went to her brother's room, only to find him in the midst of a workout with his girlfriend. After hearing what happened with Mina and how she caught her brother lacking, Wataru finally realizes the actual reason Mina decided to do this job. She wants to nurture her spirit of independence, as Mina can't always be with her older brother. Ever since that day, Wataru has noticed that Mina's behavior considering the workload has been amazing. He realizes that this is one of those stories where a person tries to fill the void inside their heart by working. Suddenly, Fuka pays the shop a visit and he introduces Fuka to Mina, letting her know that she is a middle schooler. Wataru figures that Mina might get along with Fuka as both of them are readers. Fuka instantly starts asking Mina different questions about books and the two of them start discussing the topics of books. Soon after, Wataru notices that there aren't any customers coming, which means Mina won't be able to practice much. This gives him the idea of using this time to practice. He starts off by acting as a rude customer while Mina tries her best to deal with him. Now, it's Fuka's turn to act as a troublesome customer and Mina ends up handling her perfectly. After Fuka leaves, Wataru tells Mina that she is a girl with good vibes, and they'll quickly become friends even after he leaves. However, Mina gets a little sad after hearing about him leaving the store. Back at home, Keed arrives and asks Wataru to make her some coffee. Keed takes a sip and walks away, and Wataru later notices that he accidentally added salt instead of sugar. The next day, Wataru continues to teach Mina the basics and is teaching the art of greeting customers. This reminds Mina of the time when Ikenos's girlfriend visited their house and made omeris for them. However, she started eating it using Mina's spoon, which didn't sit right with her, and she left. Soon after, Wataru teaches Mina the correct way of wrapping books and is surprised about how perfectly and carefully she handles them. Wataru then comments that she should keep her bangs up in school as well. After his shift is over, Wataru leaves the store and runs into Ikenos. Mina also comes out and notices her older brother, who asks her to hang out together, but she refuses to do so and hides behind Wataru. He tries to move away but realizes that Mina doesn't want to talk to her brother. To buy some more time, he proposes talking in a cooler place instead of standing right under the scorching sun. The two of them then sit in a restaurant and Ikenos starts off by apologizing. Wataru asks Ikenos if he is aware of the reason. She starts the part-time job and finds out that Mina has not been speaking to her brother at all. Nonetheless, Ikenos apologizes for neglecting her after he started going out with Yuri and asks Mina to get back to their regular selves. Just then, Yuri also arrives at the restaurant and sits next to them. Yuri then also apologizes for stepping into the spot that was originally Mina's. She also advises Mina to leave the job as it is too soon, but Mina refuses. Wataru also butts in and informs the two of them that Mina has been taking the job seriously and doing a great job. However, according to Ikenos, Mina must be forcing herself to do this as she is a shy girl. To which Wataru replies that for a younger sibling, it is completely normal for them to detach themselves from the older ones when they grow up, and tells Ikenos that deciding Mina's future is something he should probably wait until she can explain in her own words. After they leave, Wataru mentions how it only bought her some more time and Mina shows gratitude for all he did. Apparently, from other people's perspective, what Ikenos did might be the best for her younger sister, but someone like Wataru wouldn't be okay if all she did was for nothing. And this results in Mina crying. In order to help with the school tour, Eika and Takaki arrive at the school. Turns out he gained some muscles and got tanned because of all the running he did. Eika then takes her seat and looks at her phone where Kei and Wataru are planning on going out again. Wataru is busy working at the shop when Fuka arrives and comments on how hot it is, advising him to watch out for heat exhaustion. Soon after, Mina joins them as well and starts discussing the topic of books with Fuka. She gives Mina a rare book that is out of print, which makes her really happy. Back at home, Keed requests a soda and comments on how he is still continuing his part-time job and looking after Mina at the same time. She then asks Wataru to help out with the school visits, as even though 2 students from each class are helping, there is still a shortage of people who will be responsible for guiding the middle schoolers. In the end, Wataru agrees to help out with the school tour. Keed then teases Wataru about his relationship with Shinomiya and asks him to call her. Having no other choice, Wataru gives Shinomiya a call, and at first, she doesn't recognize him, but finally does when she hears the sound of Wataru getting bullied by Keed. Wataru tells Shinomiya that he will be willing to help out with the school's visit tour. At first, she politely declines his offer, but Wataru keeps on pressuring her, and she ends up admitting the need for help in manual labor. The next day, Shinomiya meets up with Wataru and starts acting all awkward, but he asks her to act normally, which she takes as his agreement to join the discipline committee. Shinomiya then informs Wataru that Yu is currently angry at her because of the beating she gave to Wataru at that time. Later, she informs him that the student council is responsible for showing students the way while the discipline committee has been given miserable jobs including manual labor. However, as the committee is mostly made up of girls, it is really hard for them to take care of stuff including manual labor. Shinomiya then shows Wataru how only good-looking students are selected as the people responsible for guiding middle schoolers. He also notices Eika and Takaki sitting together and thinks about how good they look together. Shinomiya then takes him to the discipline committee's office where everyone is glad to see him except for the stingy childhood friend. Ikeno's then comments on how Mina always talks about Wataru, admitting that the creep might have clapped her. On the other hand, Takaki invites Eika to come and watch his football game, but she refuses to do so. Later, Eika remembers the time she helped Wataru and thinks about how she didn't help him out of kindness but because she saw herself in him, considering how helpless he was. Soon after, Wataru confesses his love but Eika rejects him, explaining that she has other stuff to do than waste her time with a pathetic loner like him. Ever since that day, Wataru started following her all the time and pestering her whenever he got the chance, even though she always rejected him in a harsh way. He didn't give up. Due to this, many girls started pitying Eika and started talking to her, which resulted in the loneliness slowly disappearing. Unfortunately, Wataru also got accepted into the same school as Eika did, and his only reason for getting into this high school was that Eika was aiming for it in the first place. During their time at high school, Eika told Wataru to stop all this as they were not at middle school anymore, but he didn't listen at all. Slowly, people like Kei started appearing in Eika's life, and even though it wasn't the high school life she had envisioned, Eika was still fulfilled with the life she got. Back in the present, Eika starts running around the school and tries to find someone, and Takaki asks her if she is thinking about Wataru. This conversation is interrupted when he receives a call, and Eika is on her way home when she realizes that she misses him a little, only to put on that tsundere act once again. She then notices Wataru walking around and runs after him all around the school. After searching every classroom, she eventually runs into him in the corridor. Both of them fall on the ground and he asks her the reason she was in such a hurry. After bumping into Wataru, he tells her that he is busy with manual labor. Eika does the creepy thing by giving Wataru a smell and mentions how he smells like a weeb who has been locked in his room for days. Seeing how happy she looks makes Wataru question if something good happened to her and finally asks her the reason she was in such a hurry. Eika replies that she was running to see him, which makes him even more confused. She lets him know that it is kind of sad that the two of them met in such a long time. Wataru apologizes, saying that he didn't have much free time, and Eika asks if he was able to hit it off with her junior at work, to which he replies that their relationship got much better, and with that being said, Eika runs out of things to say, which makes things awkward for Wataru. Eika then remembers how Kei sent him the pictures from their beach trip and tries to take his phone, which results in them accidentally getting closer to each other. Luckily, Kei arrives and breaks the tension between them. Wataru then brings them some drinks, and Kei mentions how she has been busy with the volleyball club. Afterward, Eika asks him about the reason he came to school, and Wataru informs them about how his older sister practically forced him to. He then mentions how the school has been assigning only good-looking people for the role of guides. This comes as a surprise, and Kei tells how Eika is the perfect fit. Kei starts teasing Wataru about him wanting to become a guide as well, but he is not really confident in his disgusting-looking face. Eika asks Wataru if he will be coming to school again during break and plans to meet up again before leaving. At the bookstore, both of them finish their shift, and Mina reminds Wataru that he is off tomorrow because of the school visit. This makes him wonder if Mina will be okay on her own, and she reassures him that everything will be alright. The next day, it is time for the school visit, and all the middle schoolers gather at the gymnasium. Hayato gives a speech and welcomes them on this school visit, while Wataru watches from the sideline and notices how he mocked everyone. Surprisingly, the group that is assigned to Eika consists of Fuka as well. Before the tour starts, the girls ask about the relationship between Takaki and Eika, which they dismiss and start the official tour. The girl asks Eika the reason she chose this school, and she replies that the uniforms were the cutest of all the schools. Apparently, the girls already know Shinomiya and have already started simping on her. Suddenly, they notice some middle schooler harassing Rina, and Eika decides to step in, and she gives them a cold stare, saying that the school doesn't need people like them. She finally shuts them down and returns to her group. After a while, the tour ends, and the boys from before also apologize to Eika, and she ends up forgiving them. Coincidentally, Fuka notices Wataru and calls him out. She looks at her and realizes Fuka along with Takaki and Eika running towards them. Eika starts giving him cold stares, and Fuka's friends start confessing how Wataru is the person who taught her polite language, a way to see reality, and knocked some common sense in her. Fuka accidentally mentions the outing as well and realizes the mistake she made, leading to her running away. Takaki realizes something is wrong and makes a run for a while, and Eika also drags Wataru away. She then tells Kei about everything that happened, who makes fun of him, mentioning how the closet creep was enjoying himself even during his job. They then force him to explain everything that happened to the two of them. After the full explanation, Eika asks Wataru to let her delete the swimsuit picture, but he refuses, as pleasuring himself is one thing he uses it for. In exchange for him not deleting the picture, Eika asks Wataru to hang out with her and Kei as well, to which he instantly agrees. Wataru is working at the bookstore and Mina informs him that it will rain soon. Suddenly, it starts raining and Wataru notices Eika coming towards the shop. She enters the shop and Mina gives her a towel to dry herself off. Eika also notices that Mina has changed a bit. Wataru agrees and asks the reason behind her visit, and she replies that it was to watch him work. He then informs Eika that he is planning to quit after the summer vacation ends, and just then, Fuka also arrives at the shop. She is surprised to meet Eika at the shop and thanks her for the tour. Mina then calls Fuka and starts drying her off before she gets sick. Eika gets a little jealous and asks him to join them, but he doesn't want to leave Eika alone. This makes her blush and she accidentally bumps into the books, but Wataru manages to grab onto her before she falls to the ground. Mina and Fuka see them in clapping position and decide to leave them be. Afterward, Eika mentions that she wants Wataru to visit her house as she wants him to be like an older brother to Eri. Their conversation is yet again interrupted when they notice the other two staring at them, only to close the door afterward. A few days later, Wataru finally visits her house but is nervous to ring the doorbell. Luckily, Kei steps up and rings it for him. Eika instantly opens the door and invites them inside. Wataru formally greets Eri and she instantly becomes friends with Wataru, forcing him to act as her pet donkey. Even Eika is surprised to see how frank Eri is with Wataru, and Kei comments that both of them might connect as they are younger siblings. After playtime is over, they all enjoy a glass of drink when Kei mentions that Eika was most likely like Eri when she was little, making Wataru have weird thoughts. Seeing them fight makes Kei tease them even more, and she asks Eri if she wants Wataru as an older brother, to which she agrees. After the second round of playtime, Wataru is completely drained. Soon after, Eika's mom arrives and after the greeting, tells Wataru that Eika tells her stories about Wataru. Nonetheless, Eika avoids any more contact with Wataru with her mom and escorts them to the train station. On their way back, they talk about how Eri looks like her mother while Eika takes after her dad. This reminds Wataru about how Eika tells her mother stories about him, and he asks her about it, and Kei uses this as a perfect chance to give them some alone time. Wataru also tries to leave, but Eika insists on escorting him further. After some time, Eika mentions that school has been fun lately as she has started hanging out with more people than she previously used to. Wataru admits that it was his fault, but Eika lets him know that she was in the wrong as well. At that time, their family was going through financial struggles which didn't give her much time to live a normal life. Furthermore, the only reason people got attracted to her was because they already knew her because of how persistent and clingy Wataru was. Nonetheless, Wataru apologizes for getting in her way and Eika disagrees, saying that he is where she belongs. This comes as a surprise, but they get interrupted by fireworks, which surprisingly brings the two of them closer to each other. Eika makes the excuse of not being well with loud noise and clings to Wataru for the time being. She then asks him to come and talk to her like he did before, as his reformed behavior is throwing her off. He agrees and the two of them start walking back. Eika gathers up the courage and holds Wataru's hands. After reaching home, Eika shows gratitude for agreeing to her requests, and Wataru returns home, only to be troubled by his older sister who wants him to help with the cultural festival as well. The next morning, Wataru finds Eika waiting for him outside and she fixes his tie for him. With that being said, the two of them walk to school together while being awkward and embarrassed. This was all about our realist boy. Will Eika slowly fall in love with Wataru? Comment realist below and let us know. Subscribe to the channel for more plot-filled videos.